thought you were going.
Okay. My name's Jim Broach, and our speaker tonight...
And who are you?
I'm the executive director of the Obsessive Compulsive Foundation, and our speaker tonight is Steven Phillipson. He's a staff psychologist with the Institute of Behavioral Therapy in New York City. Dr. Phillipson had been featured in one of our newsletters, Thinking the Unthinkable, which we received tremendous amount of letters and phone calls from throughout the United States, and Dr. Phillipson has been nice enough to work with individuals on the phone throughout the United States, and also having some of his students work with them too. Dr. Phillipson also does a behavioral therapy group at the Institute that is very well received. And basically, we asked him to come speak tonight on the pure obsessional. Dr. Phillipson.
Thank you. I'd just like to give you an informal history as to what led me here this evening. I have a pretty substantial background in behavior therapy, and I was sort of reared in the old school of behavior therapy, where things that you can't observe or get two people to get agreement with didn't exist and wasn't worth paying attention to. And that being my foundation as a psychologist, when I started working at the Institute for Behavior Therapy, I took a particular liking to persons with obsessive-compulsive disorder, because you contrast someone who comes in and says, I'm having an existential crisis, with someone who comes in and says, I'm washing my hands 40 times a day. And with my background, it seemed like I was going to have a much greater positive effect on the hand washer. So I was trained by a person by the name of Gordon Ball, who in Manhattan is a pretty renowned specialist. And we got together a group of our combined clients, and it was in that process that he sort of taught me through osmosis on a lot of what I know now about OCD. And as my caseload of obsessive-compulsives increased, and what I mean by obsessive-compulsives are those persons who have more overt, observable behavioral rituals, I was confronted with people who also had just the thought part of the disorder. People who were having thoughts that were recurrent and extremely anxiety-provoking, but there were no overt behavioral manifestations that I could say to the person basically, hey, stop doing that and you're going to get better. And as I decided to look around for what help was available for these people empirically, I discovered that most psychologists don't like working with obsessive compulsives in general, and basically even behaviorists seem to have just given up on the idea of being able to help what I call pure obsessional thinkers. And I didn't think that that was too fair, and I said to myself, well, this disorder is the same, it just takes these different forms. So if we can help people with the behavioral manifestation of OCD, surely there must be some type of a help available for those who have just the thought part of it. And I decided to kind of tap into my stringent behavioral learning to come up with what I consider to be a viable treatment. And I guess today's talk will be what I've come up with through some trial and error and a lot of empirical foundation. Because basically, unfortunately at this point, there's not a lot of empirical research that's going to be available in professional journals which will support anything that I'm saying, not because it's been tested, but because it's such a brand new area and so little has really been paid attention to this part of OCD. Anyway, I see OCD as having three main branches, and the widest branch is that which has been given a lot of attention in the media and in professional journals, and that being what I call the obsessive compulsive, the person who has the anxiety-provoking thought, and to that thought engages in some overt behavioral ritual to reduce or escape the anxiety. such as, of course, the hand washing, excessive checking, perfectionism, ordering, hoarding, the list kind of goes on. And the other branch of OCD, which I think hasn't been paid much attention to at all, and I won't be discussing in much detail tonight, I call the responsibility obsessive compulsive. And this is manifested as in the person who isn't so much concerned with the well-being of himself, but has a preoccupation with protecting some significant other, be it family member or even society at large. And these people will have a obsessive spike, which is a warning that says, that branch is a little low. If I were to leave it that low and some poor innocent person were to poke his eye out on it, what a loathsome wretch I would be to leave the branch like that. So I better kind of do this undoing response to take away that hazard. And that can, as you might imagine, involve a tremendous amount of time. Anyway, tonight's discussion is going to focus on the pure obsessional, and I see the pure obsessional as kind of having two main features. The first being the obsessive spike, or the person who just engages in what I call spiking. And an example of that might be certain words popping into a person's head, like fuck or shit, repetitively over and over again. And even certain phrases without that much meaning might be extremely redundant. I worked with one person who had the obsessive thought, I can't fall asleep, just going over in her head chronically throughout the day. And the other type of pure obsessional thinker is what I consider the problem solver. And with this type of puro, the person has a spike which presents itself as a question. An example would be, what's the name of my 5th grade teacher? That question will pop into the person's head with the idea that unless I find this answer, the question will never leave me, and I'll never be able to really concentrate or have mental freedom unless I solve this particular item. Another example would be, what if I were to bring out the garbage and my neighbor were to look at me kind of funnily or in a funny way, and what if they were to say something rude? And so what the person would do is obsessively ruminate about some type of a problem-solving situation that might aid them if that event were to occur. Sure.
You said there were 3 branches, so what was the third?
The 3 branches are the classic obsessive-compulsive who has the overt rituals. The next branch, which I hopefully will submit another article on, the responsibility obsessive-compulsive, and the third being the puro. The pure obsessional thinker, the person who just has obsessive thoughts, and the ritual involves eliminating the ambiguity and the anxiety through a mental obsessive process. And that's what tonight's lecture will be on. The question often occurs, well, how do you know what is an obsessive thought as opposed to what would be a natural type of question? And that comes up because when I instruct clients to start isolating certain themes within their thought processes which are problematic, they might say to me, well, if a real scenario happened, wouldn't it be justified for a person to think about it? Like, what would you do if the stock market crashed and you had most of your investments in the market? And my answer to that is that the way of distinguishing between a obsessive thought from those which aren't is the element of anxiety that's involved, and the idea that if I don't attend to it, there will be a tremendous amount of discomfort.